Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered, the podcast that takes the mystery out of commercial real estate and makes it accessible for everyone. I'm Caleb David, a broker, investor, and community builder with over a decade of experience helping businesses and individuals bring their visions to life. Here we break down the market, share expert insights, and talk about the opportunities that commercial real estate creates for businesses and communities alike. No fluff, no gatekeeping, just real, unfiltered conversations that empower you to navigate the space with confidence. So whether you're an investor, a business owner, or simply curious about commercial real estate, welcome. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody, to the Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered podcast with Caleb David. I'm your host, and today I'm really excited to have Jonathan Greene joining us today. Jonathan he's a seasoned investor and founder of Streamlined Properties. It's recognized as one of in the top 1.5% of teams nationally by RealTrends for 3 years running. He's also the voice behind Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing, a top-ranked podcast that brings mindful principles to the investing world. Jonathan's commercial experience includes ownership in multifamily syndications, strip malls, residential-style office buildings, and industrial spaces. He's a true advocate for relationships over transactions. He's redefining what it means to build wealth in real estate. So, Jonathan, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to have you here, and I love what you say about it being about relationships versus transactions. That's something I talk to my team about all the time. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about you and how you shared with me you used to be a trial attorney. How did you get into where you are now?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on the show. I love getting access to new audiences, so I appreciate it. Yeah, I grew up with a dad who was a real estate investor. He was an attorney, as was I, but he always was doing real estate. Came from divorced parents, so he would pick me up Friday. We would spend the whole weekend together, and we would literally spend the whole weekend looking at homes, going to yard sales, and talking about real estate and going and picking up checks as he was a landlord of a lot of properties. He was way ahead of his time. He knew all the things that people use technology for now, my dad was doing without technology then. And I learned how to be an investor before technology. So I still followed these more old school principles, but I just had access to it. Even though I was a kid, I was understanding landlord-tenant relationships. I was figuring out what real estate meant, what it was worth, why we were getting it. My dad we had fun like when I was a kid, but he didn't treat me like I'm only a child. He talked to me like I was an adult about money and real estate from the time I was a baby all the way up. I think I was just around it, and I never looked at, whereas now everybody likes to coin themselves a real estate investor. My dad did stuff. He
Yeah.
was an attorney, that's what people knew him, but he didn't really make that much money as an attorney. He made it all doing weird real estate deals and buying foreclosures and being smart and leveraging partnerships. I know we're going to talk about relationships. I watched him with tenants and with other business owners and at yard sales making offers on homes. So I really saw what it was all about. And then as I got older, I intuited what he did and I just started doing it. And then I realized, wait, he's the one who told me how to do all this. And now he's been gone for 20 years. But a lot of what I do is really an homage to what he taught me, both directly and indirectly.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. And so you had access to, so a lot of people don't have access to that background in their childhood. And so I think that what a huge benefit that was for
Yeah.
you. But how would you, for someone who's looking to get into investing in commercial real estate, what are some things that they can do to start learning those processes?
Yeah, and I think commercial is a different beast. The majority of what I did growing up was residential, but not all of it. We owned a lot of commercial random properties, strip mall. I still remember this electronics store that we owned the building in Yonkers, New York, and we would pick up the checks there. And I remember it was always fun because they had video games, so I could get a video game every time I was there. I was like, yeah, let's pick up the check. So I think when you look at technology now and learning commercial, it's a little bit of a different thing than residential. And I think that's why it's important that they're separated because the way you can't go to a bunch of commercial open houses on the weekend to get reps. So you have to really learn I personally would start with real estate meetups so I could meet other people who own commercial real estate or participate as brokers or lenders in the commercial space so I could start to understand what the options are. And I think people, commercial sounds like it's just one thing, but it's so many different asset classes and they all require a different skill set and they're all interesting.
Yeah,
So I think like when you think commercial, you think more scale. A lot of people that I've interviewed on my podcast started off in single residential or low multifamily, and then just realized you can't scale that fast with 20 single families. Why not just get a 20 unit and go that way? And
yeah,
then some of them saw all the alternative asset classes. So I think it always starts with people. I think that if you want to get versed in commercial real estate, as I said, you can't do it at open houses. You have to do it by meeting people, definitely knowing brokers in the game because brokers on the commercial side, much different than residential. There's less of them, but they have access to a lot more, in my
yeah.
opinion.
That's a great point. And you talk about relationship versus transactions. And so that means
Yeah.
a completely different mindset. So why do you think that mindset matters more than deal count?
I think if you look at the social media age, everybody's trying to project metrics that make them feel better or look better or sound better. But the truth is, it doesn't really make a difference how many doors you own if they're not producing income. Maybe they're on an appreciation scale, but then you wouldn't be so excited to say, I have 100 doors. So my experience in real estate syndications has only been going on since last year in multifamily. So I could say, that I own almost 500 multifamily units, but I don't because I own a very small percentage, either 50K or 100K in these syndications for me. So I own a portion of almost 500 multifamilies, but I would never put that out there as saying I have 500 units. And I think a lot of people are doing it because it makes them feel better. But if you own 10% of 100 doors, that's 10 doors. You just do the math. So to me, because of how I grew up, and that's fortunate for me that I had someone who didn't care about flash. My dad liked houses and cars, and other than that, he literally got his clothes at Caldor,
Yeah,
which you probably don't even know what
no,
it
I
is, but it's
don't.
basically like Kmart, a little bit upgraded version. But that's what he cared about. So he really practiced that kind of millionaire next door philosophy where no one would really know what he has and he didn't have to speak about it.
Right.
And that's the way I grew up. So I actually never knew how many doors I had at any time ever. At sometimes it was a lot, at sometimes like now it's less, but it's comparative because now I'm involved in these syndications and it just depends how you count doors.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what you're talking about is something that we've talked about on the show before is how much of ego there is in commercial real estate. And you're right, social media does want you to put forth your best foot forward, and sometimes the truth gets stretched, right? And I think one thing that someone said to me when I first started getting to the business, they're like, if you want God to work in your life, get into real estate. And I am a spiritual person, but it is really true because there's all kinds of things that come at you that really mess with your mind. And especially when you're new in the industry and you're building kind of your clientele and trying to get your footing, it's really difficult to break into the industry just because of how things have been done in the past and how unfortunately, a lot of other brokers treat the newbies. And so there is a lot
Yeah.
that you have to deal with internally, emotionally, and mentally. And so that's something we do love talking about on the podcast. And how do you think that mindfulness enhances long-term success in real estate?
Yeah, I think it's rolling with the punches and understanding that there was this workflow that used to be. And you used to see zero females in commercial real estate 25 years ago, and now there's so many substantial deal makers in the field, but there's still sexism that's prevalent inside large scale commercial. And one of the hardest things about commercial is most deals are going to be partnerships. You can start small with mixed use or a little bit of a strip mall, but even for that, your buy-in's different than buying a condo.
Yeah,
And no one's getting excited if they buy just like a condo in an office complex as their first commercial. So when you talk commercial, you are talking a lot of partnerships, syndications, bigger deals. So it is. And there's definitely gatekeepers. Commercial brokers don't, even as a residential agent, if you call on a commercial property, you will zero times get a call back because they only call back direct sales every single time. And a lot of commercial brokers transact person to person because they don't really have the time to just pick up a call from someone like a rando that they don't know because that's not really in the best interest of the seller. It could be, so
Right.
I still think they should return the call. But yeah, there's a lot of people, that just don't understand the commercial game when they're looking at something that's maybe starting off small, which would be like maybe an 8 unit apartment complex. So I think you have to, one, understand from a mindful basis that this is the way that people used to do business, and you have to prove something to them before they're going to do business with you. And I think once you learn how to talk the talk and not just talk the talk, but understand what you're saying, not using just acronyms and asking about cap rates and things like that. And that's why you need to get in the room, like I said in the beginning, with other commercial investors, how they get into it, who do they know. And you're not going to get that 20-minute coffee with someone who has $100 million commercial listings. You have to work up to it. So I think that a lot of modern culture doesn't want to prove themselves
Mhm.
because they'll focus more on the fact that, yeah, there are gatekeepers. That's true. Maybe that's not necessarily right. But I've always been an advocate for I'm going to prove that I know what I'm doing in this space, whether it's I need to provide a proof of funds to show I have the money to transact, or explain what I've done in commercial, or explain that I haven't done anything, but I've done this in residential. You do need a way to get in, and you can't expect somebody who's doing these gigantic commercial deals to just pay attention to you because you want them to.
No, that's a great point, and you're right. I tell my team all the time, we call people back no matter what.
Yeah.
So, and even if it's a quick 2-minute phone call to at least point them in the right direction and evaluate whether it's at. But you're right.
Yeah.
The norm is that the random calls don't get returned.
A lot of them are BS. So like I'm generally do residential as an agent, but I've transacted commercial in my life as an investor a lot. And yeah, I understand, but I agree with you. You call everybody back because you just don't know who they're going to know, and it's
Right.
worth it 5 minutes. Or you have systems in place where somebody else will call them back for you to see if it's worth your time. That, like, I don't talk on the phone, so that's what I would do. But
Yeah.
I still respond to everything just to see whether it be text message or not. But
Right.
yeah, there's definitely a higher bar to entry in commercial because your price points are higher. The loan portals are a little bit different. There's a lot of different loan options for commercial that aren't available for residential.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point. But personally, the hybrid version is mixed use for me. And I love mixed use properties because I think it's a great way for new investors to be on the line between residential and commercial. And it's also a diversified asset inside itself
Yeah.
because you have rental, residential rental, and now you have retail. So I love that as an asset. So for first timers, that's where I would be looking because
Yeah.
those are on the MLS. You don't have to be on LoopNet to understand. And PS, if you find a mixed use and it's 51% residential, you can use a residential owner occupied loan on it as little as 3.5% down. Most people don't know that. So you
Yeah.
can basically house hack a mixed use property, which for brand new investors looking to be interested in commercial, but also some access to residential, that's a great option.
Yeah. Totally understand. And people that are going into investments, like you said, lots of times it's going to be a partnership of some sort. They're throwing in some money. We just recently had an attorney on that talked about securities and how that all works.
Yeah.
So it's important for people to be informed and have the right team around them. But I think also it's important who you partner with. So how would you define values first investing?
All right. With partnerships, it to me, everything's about people. I'd say the same thing as you scale up into syndication investments. We always say you're looking at the jockey, not the horse. The operator is going to be the most important thing and part of the deal. And I think in partnerships, your personal relationship is important. You don't want to be swayed by somebody who looks flashy on Instagram or drives a nice car because that doesn't mean anything. You really want to know what's your transactional history. Can I see it? The best thing, the reason why you start at meetups is because somebody can say, "Yeah, I own this office complex," and you just say, "Hey, is there any? Can I just swing by with you one day? I literally won't say anything. I'll just be a fly on the wall." Almost anybody, if you built up a little bit of a relationship, is going to give you that type of access, and that's the best way to learn. So I
Yeah.
think values wise, you're looking for someone who meets your values, but probably doesn't have the exact same skill set as you,
Yeah.
so that if somebody's really good with the data, you can be somebody who's more like understanding the actual building status, the mechanicals and things like that on a commercial building, but somebody else is like really good with understanding the cap rate and how to adjust for management and capex and things like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you touched on this earlier, but you put some words to it. You said you talk about mainstream mixed use,
Yeah.
your favorite asset class. And
Yeah.
I think I know what it means, but Can you maybe define what you mean by that?
Yeah, if you look at COVID, Main Street got decimated and there's lots of properties. If you look at traditional mixed use, you usually find it in downtown city centers, which are super cool, super walkable,
Mhm.
but usually lack now, especially what I want. At least I live in a town where I live right off of Main Street and there's like nothing going on there. And
Yeah.
it's because they have building restrictions for there and they're not allowing certain types of restaurants to come in. But I just think that as we saw what happened during COVID and everybody went into home offices and stayed at home and we're all in a complete loneliness epidemic, that Main Street kind of mixed use property is the linchpin to bringing back some of these towns. And I have a lot of friends who've done it or participate in it. And when you see it, it really makes sense. I see movie theaters that are going out. Can they be repurposed or can they be used for that again? There's just a lot of commercial space available on main streets. And I think that's where people are going to want to go as we trend to this more kind of artificial environment. A lot of us really don't want to keep going that way. We'd like to get back more to Main Street. And personally, I just love walking on main streets. When I go to visit towns, I'm like, where's the main street?
Where's the
Whether it's
hub?
called Main Street. Yeah, you just want to see, oh,
Yeah.
cool, independent restaurants, independent bookstores, all the things that make a town that. And I'm fine with Starbucks. Like Starbucks is fine, but
Right.
I'd like to see that independent coffee shop there also so that everybody can win.
Yeah, and I think that's a win for small businesses as well. If you've got the right investor that positions the asset the right way to be able to create these small businesses to not just to survive, but to actually succeed and become that hub of excitement.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. So in contrast to that, if someone is, they're working their way up to syndication, how do you invest in multifamily syndication?
Yeah, growing up, I didn't know about it. It wasn't a thing. And then obviously it's become more prevalent over the last several years. But a lot of things have gone wrong in syndications. I found them because of guests I had on the podcast. And then I started to see, like my age, once I was over 50, I was like, all right, I have to think about investing different. I don't want to be active in all these assets. I hate landlording. I love flipping when I'm selling it. And every single day before that, I hate it and don't want to do it. I seem to continue to do it, but I don't enjoy it. And I have buffers for all the systems. Like I can't go on site for flips. So it's really being more passive than active. You talked about ego before, and to be a passive investor and to invest in syndications as a limited partner, you have to leave your ego at the door. But you do it by saying, I want to give up control. I want to give up some of this money and leave it for 5 to 7 years. For me, it's generationally for my children and just save for investments. And it's almost for me a hedge against myself. So it's like if I take this money away, then I can't try to do two flips or something, which I know will annoy me. So I'm really using age, which helps me reduce my ego even more each year with mindfulness principles and understand that. Look, the best thing I can say about syndications for somebody like me is I have no interest in owning multifamily by myself because I don't want to pay property management. I don't want to be a landlord, and I don't want to be responsible for that many units. But I can get involved in multifamily syndications and get monthly deliverables and see how it works. And then maybe I want to be a syndicator later because I know what I'm doing. And geographically, it's also super interesting to me because I don't want to buy just a single family house in Chicago, Madison, Wisconsin, or Dallas, but I can be in multifamily syndications in those areas. So now I have assets in areas where that I think are really interesting. They have good geographic trends, migration trends play in their favor. So I can use my geographic and like migrational research to help myself in another form of investment, which I have no control over. But again, as I said before, I'm betting on the operator. I do my due diligence. I look at the debt on the deal, and I feel like I know from what they've done, they're all performing. I've had no negative performance on four, even the last one I just just put it in. But I think I chose wisely, and hopefully I won't be proven wrong.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And we talked a little bit about how COVID has affected things, and COVID definitely has affected, especially the office space
Oh
and
yeah.
retail as well. I've also noticed, and this is something that I've just now started to come to the realization that I need to do more of, is why are meetups and conferences so important? The energy that comes from that, I find that I've been lacking. But what are some tips, or if there's particular events and conferences that you like to be involved with?
Yeah, so I'm an introvert, so I pretty much, if I'm speaking, I go, and if not, probably not going to show up. But I host my own meetups, so every month I host my own meetups, which I think is a great thing. When you're talking commercial, your local meetup might not have a bunch of people who are invested in large scale commercial. So you have these kind of larger commercial conventions or things like Best Ever Conference. I have a lot of friends who go to that. They love it. And Passive Pockets now has their own event, which is smaller, which is really for LP investors and GPs to talk. But I think the importance of people is you won't think that you can do commercial until you see someone who's just like you doing
Yeah.
commercial.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts all the way. Before you buy a house, you want to know friends who they bought a house. And hey, it wasn't that bad. Yeah, the loan thing's annoying. I don't like to give all the docs, but it's always that part of meeting people who are a little behind you, a little
Yeah.
ahead of you, so you have people to aspire to, but also so that people can ask you questions while you're on your journey, and
Yeah.
while you tell them about your journey, you feel better about yourself, and you also realize I'm screwing up all the time in real estate, as you were saying in the beginning, like you never know what's around the corner, and I think that's what you need to get around because most people believe that they have analysis paralysis, they can't make a decision. But when it comes to commercial, it's a high bar to entry to get in. So it's not analysis paralysis, it's a lack of confidence in relationships that put you in the rooms that will get you to take that first step.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I was talking to a friend of mine several years ago who actually owns a digital marketing company, and we were looking at how do we market the business more? How do we drive more eyes? And we got stuck in this loop of we've got to figure this out. And then he did a full analysis on it, and this doesn't, digital marketing doesn't really work for commercial real estate.
I
It's
agree.
it's a relationship business. And
Yeah.
if you're not in front of people and you're not calling people back, and be able to have the courage to pick up the phone and call, say, whether it be a title company or an attorney or a contractor, all these different resources. And I think if you're an investor working with a broker, find a broker that has those relationships if you
Oh
don't,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
that you can gather the information. Because once you do it two or three times, you now are knowing what to do.
Yeah, I think if you look across our whole conversation, it's just about getting into the room. And the people who can't figure out what to do, they're not trying hard enough to get into the room because yeah, I'm not the type of person who's just going to cold call commercial
Right.
brokers and because you have to, again, like we said, they're going to want you to prove something to them. But I'm going to figure out all the areas that I can. And I would definitely go to a large conference before I even bought something in commercial because you will get motivated by the speakers because everybody who's speaking at a commercial conference started the same way that all of us were with no properties. Nobody was, arguably, I'm the only person who literally owned a ton of properties before they was 18 because my dad was crazy with trusts and all these weird things. But like all of us started not knowing anything. I had a real push, but when you go and hear all these things of people who are syndicating thousands of units, I can tell you from interviewing all of them, most of them into their 30s weren't even doing real estate. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's no age range or time frame. It's if you're interested, read some books, listen to some podcasts, and meet people who are doing what you want. And I think you can just get the vibe from what we've talked about. It's just you just have to find your way into the room, and then once you're in the room, you actually have to be of value because that's what makes people trust you. Bring something to the table, whatever it is. Maybe it's a great personality. Maybe it's you have funding to do a deal, but you're careful of who you partner with. But you have to start bringing something. And in the beginning, it might just be time, hustle, and willingness to listen.
Yeah. That's it. Willingness to listen. I think, and asking questions, not being afraid to ask questions.
Good questions.
Good question. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. There you go. And it is about getting into the right rooms. And one of the things that I've noticed with investors that I've been working with over the years, right now, they're really targeting more of the off-market type properties, which very often are kind of the mom and pops.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how do you have a meaningful conversation with a potential mom and pop seller?
Yeah, first of all, I completely agree. Look, there's LoopNet and but that's not where what the same thing when a property goes up on Crexi or LoopNet, it means all of everybody's database doesn't want the property yet.
Yeah.
Because they no commercial brokers don't operate. They don't just put it up before they go to everybody they know. Everybody wants to do an easier deal, and not everybody wants to market it and have a big for sale sign in front of their commercial property. So it's a much different way. And mom and pop's super important in self-storage, light industrial, mobile home parks. These are the things, and you're low, like you're just just commercial apartment complexes, which I'd say would be like 5 to 20 units, are big on mom and pop owners. So your dialogue with mom and pops are always like, first of all, you have to, depends on what lists you're building and how you're getting in the room. But if you get in the room, you always want to find out really what do they want? What do they want from it? Because the thing is, when you're dealing with mom and pops, the thing that people forget about commercial real estate is an enormous amount of transactions transact on seller finance because the people who've been in the game long enough do not want the huge tax hit from
Right.
the capital gains, and they understand seller finance because they've been in commercial. They'll hold the note, they'll say, I'm willing to hold paper. New investors are like, I don't know, I think they're asking me to roll a joint or something. That's the terminology of what people used to say for seller finance. So
Yeah.
it's really about what their goals are in terms of the
Yeah.
property. Because if their goal is just a number, then you go right to seller finance because seller finance is, I can match your price, you just need to take my terms.
Yeah.
So it's always, that's the kind of easiest transaction to do. And really with mom and pops, it's just about listening, as we just were talking about in another context. There's nothing, if you go in hot on a mom and pop and just like wholesalers do on residential and just say, send them an offer, they don't even care in the slightest bit because
Right.
they very rarely have to sell. They have like hundreds of thousands in equity and they have no idea
Yeah.
what their property is, especially
Right.
important in self-storage, mobile home parks, because they're not raising rents, they don't know how to operate. So there's huge scale for people to get in, but you can't bully a mom and
Yeah.
pop owner. They hate it. You have to understand what they're, and that's why local is better. If you know the area and you understand that, hey, I've been driving by this self-storage for 25 years, I used to live over there, you're going to be in a much better place to build a relationship. And I think people forget that when you're cold calling or doing off-market acquisitions for commercial with mom and pop, that could be a year to 2 years of conversations where I'll follow up. I don't ask about the property. They always say, hey, I thought you didn't ask about the property. I said, I figured you're going to call me. We've had some good conversations. I just checking on X. Your daughter, did she graduate from college? And these are the things that people are
Yeah.
forgetting because technology makes it easier to just text blast someone. I can tell you right now, if you think that texting works on mom and pop commercial operators, just take money and burn it or go to a casino and put it in the slot machine. That is not how you transact your
Yes.
first commercial deals with mom and pops. They probably don't even have text messaging. And when you call their self-storage facility, there's not even an answering machine and they don't answer. They don't have a website. And these are the perfect buys. The only way you can buy it is if you show up and build a relationship with them over time. And
Yeah.
I think it's getting harder and harder to see because everybody's selling a course that tells you it's easier when it's not. You just go back to what my did when we were driving by and we would see a commercial strip mall and he would see a for rent sign. And one of the things he would immediately go up and figure out, is the owner have one of these bays? If not, he'd contact him. Hey, or for rent by owner is one of the best
Yeah.
things you can see because, hey, you have an open bay. You can't sell this with a loan because your values aren't going to match up the way that they calculate the cap rate here because you're down a unit. And he would try to buy those properties. And that's how we got a lot of weird hybrid commercial properties over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's that listening, the building relationship, and I think when you really want to try to build wealth, I think some people, like you said, the courses out there, they're like, it's a get rich quick.
So easy.
Yeah, it's not. You have to show up as who you are authentically, and
Yeah, yeah.
I think people can tell if you're in it just for the money or you're interested. Because keep in mind, some of these mom and pops have owned these properties for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
It's sentimental, right? Like it's part of legacy. It's a difficult conversation. Maybe their kids don't want to take over the business after they're done or the investments.
They don't. That's what's happening. If you follow Cody Sanchez, like Main Street Millionaire is all about all of these mom and pop businesses that kids don't want to operate because they're millennials and they're like, I don't want a car wash. And you're like, you don't want a car wash? I want a car wash. Like you have a laundromat. They're like, oh, that's low grade. I don't want, you don't understand. These are just ATMs. Like these are just complete cash machines. And that this is the problem. There's mom and pop. And as you're saying, their family doesn't want it. The only way they want to give it to their family.
Right.
So they want to give it to someone who they know is going to take care of it. And you have to come in with that attitude and you can't
Yes.
fake it. They
Yeah.
know the difference. They know the difference between, they don't care if you upgrade the park. They don't care. They just want to make sure that you're going to move it up a notch and still keep it the same intent that they had.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that takes the listening, it takes mindfulness, and you talk about mindfulness a lot. So, what is your mindful approach to building wealth through real estate?
Again, it came from my dad. I was fortunate. My dad was very busy and my dad came from nothing. His dad was an alcoholic gambler. He would get him a Mustang and then 2 days later it would get repossessed. So my dad was really like self-made. And I watched him and learned from him. And I never took money for granted, but I was never stressed about money, which was super fortunate for me. I grew up as a cash investor for a lot of things. But I think because of the way that he taught me and the way that my mom raised me until she passed away when she was 20, it's just that I looked at money as a growth mechanism for generational wealth before I had kids, and I still look at it now. I looked at it as a way that's something I'm going to need to survive. And maybe whatever job I choose when I get older is going to change, which it has. I've gone from being an attorney into the art world for 6 years to teaching at university and then really being full-time in real estate. But I always did real estate
Yeah.
from the time I was a kid because it's a smart asset play. And I think there's a lot of people who looking at it now as a side hustle, but commercial real estate takes a lot to operate on your own.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of newer people are going to be looking for more passive syndication type investments if they're high earners, because then you're just trusting experts in the field, but you have to be careful who you trust, just like with anything else now. And I think that I developed a more mindful pattern each year that I get older with meditation and reading. I read everything. And I think it's just helped me look at things a different way. The biggest skill that I have that applies to mindfulness and just real estate investing over my life is the ability to walk away. There's no deal that I care about, literally at all. I can
Yeah.
walk away from any deal, even if it seems like it's going to be the best deal of my life. Does that mean that I've passed on deals and then someone's crushed it? Yeah, but good for them. I'm glad somebody else did. I just don't have that kind of FOMO mentality. I'll walk away from a deal at any time. And it happens all the time because in commercial, it's pretty easy to get out of the deals. They're screwing around. They don't like what's happening. I'm like, yeah, go put it back on the market. You were on 237 days before I got it. You want to go back on the market? Have fun.
Right.
You know, and I think that's the attitude that you need to have because when you talk about negotiation principles, which has been so important in my career because I was a trial attorney, it's like once you walk away, now you have all the power. If you're unwilling to walk away or they know that you're emotionally attached, they're just going to put the screws to you. So I always like once you leave, they're like, oh, wait, he left. You
Yeah.
usually get better deals. And if you don't, good luck to them. Someone else will be fine. You'll find another deal.
Yeah.
There's a lot of real estate in America. You'll be okay.
Yeah. And I think even speaking to that, I feel like that mindfulness ties into the healthy, becoming more healthy with our ego
Oh,
and
yeah, for
not
sure.
getting so attached. In Buddhism, they talk about detachment. And
That's me.
yeah, how important it is to be like, this isn't happening to me. This is it, because I think when we operate in that space, we end up coming back with a lot stronger feelings and be able to have that mindfulness. And how do you balance having clarity, patience, and relationship building during a deal?
I mean, a lot of it's age and experience again. So it's like I can tell someone, hey, don't sweat it. But when you're new, you're crapping your pants on your first deal. You should be. It's scary. But I think I've always just had each year I develop even a more holistic vision. So if somebody's being a pain in a transaction, the first thing I think instead of what I used to think is I always wanted to fight. Again, trial attorney is like all we do is like we're just going to fight all the time. So it's in that mentality. And I had to dial it back and say not all negotiations or pending life sentences when you're in real estate. It's just real estate. So to me, I raise up the level. And when somebody's a problem in the transaction, I always go to the first, maybe they have something going on in their life. Maybe
Yeah,
they don't. It's like when
yeah,
someone cuts me off, I never honk my horn ever, unless it's like someone's going to get hurt. And
yeah.
everyone's, oh my God, they just cut you off. I'm like, maybe they're having a baby. And so
Right.
I think of that in a real estate transaction. If someone's cracking up at the end, maybe they're in financial trouble. But again, I don't want to take on their problems. So if it's causing a problem to the transaction, I have no problem walking away just because I don't really need that energy in my life.
Yeah,
And I think I've always looked at real estate as we should always be trying to get a win-win.
yeah.
And some people just have issues, whether they're just having a bad day, maybe they're getting a divorce, maybe they're just an asshole. I don't know. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's not, but again, it's not my problem. And I don't want to keep going down that road. If I know it's going to be contentious, I'm probably going to opt out. It's not worth my time. And I think everybody can benefit from just thinking anybody who does something rude to you, maybe they're just having a bad day. If
Yeah.
they keep doing it, then you can address it.
Yeah.
But like
That's the patterns.
strangers, it's just a stranger. What do
Yeah.
I care? I'm never going to see them again. They cut me off of my car.
Yeah.
What does it matter? I got
Yeah.
better things to do.
Yeah. One of the things that you said in kind of the questions that we were going over, and as we get closer to the end, you talk about community as a strategy. And I absolutely have never heard those words before, and I love that. It makes perfect sense to me. But like, how do you use your community as a strategy?
I think I look at one, yeah, I have podcast listeners just like you. I have the meetups where I'm looking at meetups of people where I can help them move up a level. As we were talking about before, I find community if I am speaking at an event or the rare time when I drag myself out to an event and I make sure that I'm making connections. Because if you don't have the community, you're not going to learn anything,
Mm,
you're not going to want to grow anything. And I think if you look at real estate as a whole, there's so many good things that can come from real estate. Where if you just look at the news, it's oh, all landlords are slumlords, real
yeah,
estate investors are all trash. And then there's people doing unbelievable projects that can benefit and turn around cities and towns. And if we just go back to my Main Street principle, it's like there's a lot of main streets that are down. And you were saying it's, yeah, you want to get that independent restaurant. If you're the person who puts that first independent opportunity for an independent bookstore to go in and then they do well, then somebody else in that town is going to say, I've always wanted to open a salon. Now
yeah,
they're going to do it. And then the next person's going to say, I want to have a little cafe.
yeah,
But someone has to be the person to do it, and the town has to have the regulations to approve it. And a lot of that is commercial based when you're talking about downtown because a lot of the stuff is mixed use. And it's going to be what brings back community more because we're missing it.
yeah.
Now, people that are my kids' age, maybe they think community is a Facebook group when
Right.
Facebook group is like the death of all of us. It's just like people spitting at each other for hours. It's just like there's nothing there that helps anymore. And I was someone who, for obviously through the pandemic, we all got over comfortable with Zoom. With podcasts, it's great that we can do this so we all don't have to show up at each other's studios. So for that, I don't feel like it's a drawback. But for everything else, we did the meetups that I do, they started virtual during the pandemic and we were doing a ton of them. We were all just bored off our asses. But
Right.
now they're in person every month. And it's important for me as an introvert to get out there, and it's
Yeah,
important to give people the opportunity to, as we've been saying, to find their community.
yeah,
You're not going to find your community and your five best friends if they're not on the same trajectory as you. If you
yeah,
want to get in commercial real estate and they all have no interest, that doesn't mean you can't be friends with them. It just means you need to find a group of five people that all they want to do is talk about commercial real estate for an hour. It'll be the best hour of your life because you're like, oh, I've been talking to my friends and they're talking about Bachelor in Paradise, which is fine, good show.
right.
But if you want to scale up, you can't only be in those rooms. So I think it all ties together. And I believe that we just need more community. Everybody's lonely, everybody's online. We just got to go back to the basics, even though for someone like me, it's hard because I am a really hard introvert, but I have to push myself to do it as well.
Yeah, and when I started my own company, I wanted there to be some way to communicate the need for community, and so we created the tagline, "Creating space, building community."
Yeah, I love it.
That speaks to that the listening piece, right? So you're creating space for other people. And I think there's other ways that you can get involved in this. Like, for example, like I do consulting for the Small Business Development Corporation.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
So you're talking to these small businesses all the time, and you're able to help them. Like we said before about if you're an investor in real estate, to have somebody that you aspire to be and someone that you can teach. And I
Yeah.
think having that kind of set of, you can't not have community if you're doing that. And so I've loved this conversation. I feel like we could probably talk for another hour or so. Jonathan, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners, and where can people find you?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. I enjoyed the conversation a lot. It's always fun to go on other people's podcasts so I can not be the one asking all the questions. My podcast is Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. That's the website. Super easy to find everywhere you can listen to podcasts. On social, you can usually find me at Trust Green. Green has an E at the end. Again, I'm old, but I'm pretty decent on social, so I'm easy to find. LinkedIn, it's pretty easy to find as well. Yeah, and I just really appreciate having the conversations. I never have anything to sell. That same mindful principle, like I just figure whatever I put out will come back to me as long as I do it in a productive way. And having the opportunity to go on podcasts like this helps me reach more people. And the one thing I say about podcasts, which I think is so amazing, is we could just be having this conversation. Somebody could be driving their car literally anywhere in any country, and they could get just one tidbit part of our conversation, and it could change a trajectory of their life because they just hadn't heard it before
Yeah.
because they didn't have friends who talk like that. And now they're going to go to a meetup. Then at the meetup, they're going to meet someone who they're friends with for a year. 2 years later, they're going to become business partners. And then eventually they're going to own like 8 car washes. It can
Right.
happen all from us just having a
Love
conversation
it.
because that's the plus of technology. It can get out there to everyone. So
Yeah.
thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
We've loved having you here. And listeners, feel free to share this episode with your friends, your community, and stay tuned for our next episode. Have a great day. That's a wrap on this episode of Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered. I hope you found value in today's conversation and feel more confident about navigating the world of commercial real estate. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who could benefit from these insights. You can connect with me, Caleb David, and the team at David Commercial Real Estate. Just check the show notes for more information. Thanks for listening, and remember, creating space is more than just real estate. It's about building community. See you next time.